The morning had barely begun when the entire executive floor fell silent. A young woman stood beside the reception desk with trembling hands, clutching a small, worn photograph against her chest as her supervisor pointed toward the elevator and shouted that she was fired. She did not argue. She did not beg. She simply lowered her eyes and held the photograph tighter, as though it were the last piece of her life she could still protect. What nobody in that glass-walled office knew was that the photograph she was holding was connected to the one person the company's billionaire CEO had spent 15 years trying to find. Before we begin this emotional story, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0 if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion to change someone's life. Her name was Alara Whitmore, a 27-year-old administrative assistant who had learned early that life did not always reward honest people quickly. She arrived at Sterling Crest Holdings every morning before sunrise, wearing the same carefully pressed navy blouse, simple black trousers, and modest flats. Her chestnut-brown hair was usually tied into a neat low ponytail, and her tired green eyes revealed the long nights she spent caring for her elderly grandmother. Alara had never complained about her circumstances. She worked quietly, paid every bill she could, and saved whatever little remained for her grandmother's medication and rent. For nearly 2 years, Alara had worked on the 42nd floor of Sterling Crest Holdings, one of the most prestigious companies in the city. She had never dreamed of becoming wealthy. She only wanted stability. Her work was dependable, her records were accurate, and even the most demanding executives trusted her with sensitive schedules. Yet her immediate supervisor, Vance Holloway, seemed to dislike her from the beginning. He believed employees should obey without questions, and Alara's habit of politely pointing out mistakes had slowly turned his irritation into resentment. That morning, everything changed. A confidential presentation had disappeared from the executive conference room. Vance immediately blamed Alara. He accused her of mishandling the documents and told her that incompetence had no place in a company of Sterling Crest's reputation. Alara tried to explain that she had never touched the presentation after delivering it to the conference room the previous afternoon. But Vance had already decided what he wanted everyone to believe. In front of several employees, he ordered security to escort her out. Alara stood frozen. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her. Some employees looked away because they were afraid to become involved. Others whispered behind computer screens. Her heart sank, but she refused to cry. She reached into her handbag and carefully pulled out the photograph she always carried. It showed a smiling little boy standing beside a young woman outside a small neighborhood house. The photograph was old, its corners softened by years of being handled, but Alara treasured it more than anything she owned. She stared at it for a moment before slipping it back into her bag. Then Vance shouted that she was fired. At that exact moment, the private elevator doors opened. A tall man stepped onto the executive floor, accompanied by 2 assistants. He was 46-year-old Adrian Blackthorne, the Billionaire founder and CEO of Sterling Crest Holdings. Adrian was known throughout the business world for his discipline, intelligence, and almost frightening ability to notice details other people missed. He had returned from an overseas business trip that morning and had expected a quiet meeting with his board. Instead, he saw Alara standing beside the reception desk, holding her bag tightly against her side. Something about her expression stopped him. Adrian had seen employees fired before. He had seen executives argue, investors panic, and competitors celebrate when his company faced difficulties. But Alara did not look angry. She looked heartbroken, as if she were losing far more than a job. His attention moved to the photograph in her hand. For a second, his face changed. He had seen that photograph before. Not the exact physical photograph, perhaps, but the image burned into his memory. 15 years earlier, Adrian had been a completely different man. He had been 31, newly married, ambitious, and building Sterling Crest from a small investment firm into the corporation it would eventually become. During those years, his younger sister, Celeste Blackthorne, had been the one person who kept him grounded. She had been kind, stubborn, and endlessly protective of people who had less than she did. Then Celeste disappeared. The official story was complicated. A private family dispute had separated them, and before Adrian could repair their relationship, Celeste had vanished with her infant son. Years of searching produced nothing. There were false leads, fake documents, and people who claimed to know where she had gone. Eventually, Adrian was left with only memories. And one photograph. The photograph showed Celeste standing beside her little boy. The boy had been named Noah. Adrian had not seen that photograph in years, but the image of the child's face had never left him. Now, as Alara's handbag shifted, the photograph became visible again. Adrian stepped forward and asked her to stop. The room went completely quiet. Vance immediately tried to explain that Alara had been fired because of negligence. Adrian barely looked at him. His eyes remained fixed on Alara's handbag. He asked her where she got the photograph. Alara hesitated. She had no idea why the billionaire CEO suddenly cared about an old family photograph. She explained that the woman in the picture was her grandmother's daughter, Celeste Whitmore, and that the boy was her son, Noah. Alara had grown up hearing that Noah had disappeared when he was a baby. Her grandmother had kept the story secret for years, saying only that circumstances had separated the family. Adrian felt the air leave his lungs. He asked Alara her grandmother's name. When she answered, he recognized it immediately. For 15 years, Adrian had searched for his sister under the name Celeste Blackthorne. But after leaving home, Celeste had used her mother's family name, Whitmore. That single detail had kept them separated for years. Adrian asked to see the photograph. Alara slowly handed it to him. His fingers trembled. The little boy in the picture was unmistakably Noah. His nephew. The child he had believed lost forever. But there was something even more painful. Alara was not Noah. She explained that Noah had been her grandmother's grandson through Celeste, but that after Celeste disappeared, Alara's grandmother had raised her and kept the family history hidden. Noah had later been adopted by another branch of the family after a complicated legal dispute, and Alara had spent years trying to piece together the truth. Adrian listened in disbelief. Then he noticed something written on the back of the photograph. A short message in Celeste's handwriting. It said that if anyone from the Blackthorne family ever found the photograph, they should know that she never stopped loving them. Adrian closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the powerful billionaire looked like an ordinary brother who had spent too long regretting words he never got to say. He immediately ordered a private investigation into the missing presentation. Within hours, security footage revealed that Vance himself had removed the documents and placed them in another office to make Alara appear responsible. His plan had been to blame her for a mistake so he could protect himself from an upcoming internal audit. Vance was dismissed. But Adrian did not stop there. He asked Alara about her grandmother. He learned that the elderly woman was living in a small apartment and struggling to afford basic care. Adrian arranged for the company's medical support team to help her, but he made one thing clear: Alara would not be treated as a charity case. She would be given choices, dignity, and the opportunity to decide what came next. For Alara, that was more meaningful than money. She had spent years believing that powerful people never noticed ordinary people like her. Now one of the most powerful men in the city was sitting across from her, asking about her dreams rather than her mistakes. Several weeks passed. Adrian continued searching through old records, and eventually he found a connection that changed everything. Celeste had survived. She had spent years living under a different name, working at a small coastal bookstore and raising a family far away from the city. She had never stopped wondering whether Adrian had forgiven her. When Adrian finally found her, he did not arrive with cameras, lawyers, or reporters. He simply went to the bookstore. Celeste was standing behind the counter when she saw him. For several seconds, neither moved. Then the years between them seemed to disappear. Adrian learned that Celeste had left because she believed their family had become dangerous for her young son. She had wanted to protect him from a bitter inheritance dispute. She had planned to return after things became safer, but circumstances kept changing. Shame eventually became another wall between them. Adrian told her that he had never stopped looking. Celeste cried. Not because she was angry. Because she had spent 15 years believing her brother hated her. The family began rebuilding their relationship slowly. There were no magical overnight fixes. There were difficult conversations, painful memories, and moments when both siblings struggled to understand why so much time had been lost. But they kept trying. And Alara's life changed too. She was offered a position in a new department where her organizational skills could grow. Adrian never made her successful simply because she was connected to his family. Instead, he gave her an opportunity and allowed her work to speak for itself. Months later, Alara stood inside the same executive building where she had once been humiliated. This time, she was not standing beside the reception desk waiting to be escorted out. She was presenting a major project to the leadership team. She looked confident. Her grandmother watched proudly from the audience. Adrian sat quietly in the back. When the presentation ended, the room applauded. Alara looked toward him, and Adrian smiled. He did not see an employee anymore. He saw the young woman whose courage had unknowingly brought his family back together. And the photograph that had once represented loss now sat inside a beautiful frame in Adrian's office. Not as a reminder of what had been taken from him, but as proof that sometimes, the smallest forgotten object can carry the biggest truth. Alara later realized that being fired that morning had seemed like the worst moment of her life. She had believed losing her job meant losing everything. Instead, that painful morning had opened a door she never knew existed. Sometimes life does not change because the road becomes easier. Sometimes it changes because one person finally stops judging another person by appearances. And sometimes, kindness begins with something as simple as noticing that someone is holding a photograph and wondering why. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Corner 2.0 for more emotional stories about kindness, family, forgiveness, and second chances. And before the story ends, I have one special request for you. Comment "second chances" below if you believe everyone deserves an opportunity to begin again. Because Alara's story reminds us of something we often forget: a person's worst moment does not define their entire life. The person being judged may be carrying a story nobody has bothered to understand. The quiet employee may be someone's missing family. The struggling woman may possess more courage than the richest person in the room. And the photograph someone carries close to their heart may hold a truth powerful enough to change everything. So the next time you see someone struggling, do not rush to judge them. Pause. Listen. Show kindness. Because you never know when one small act of compassion might become the beginning of someone's second chance.